Project Lead the Way. This looks like it could possibly be the last PowerPoint presentation for this particular school year. It's called Designing a Gantt Chart. It's called a Gantt chart because it's named after the person that invented it. He was an engineer and he developed basically a spreadsheet type chart that lays out how a project is completed. On the left side you have your activities, and across the top is the time frame in which they're completed. When we did these in my coursework, we actually added one level of accountability, and that was who was going to complete each part of the project. So I'm going to show you an example here of what a Gantt chart looks like. It's very linear, and it just talks about how the individual tasks for a big project are going to be completed and what the time frame for completing them is. So here's an example. This is an example for the project that you're working on right now, which is your virtual design team Gantt chart. The first thing you have to do is keep your engineering notebook up to date. It's going to be done every day. You're developing your team norms. You're doing some research. You're going to have your sketches, initial sketches done. Use a decision matrix to figure out which what design you're going to go with to complete your final project. You're going to spend a few days making your parts. You're going to have to put together the presentation, or the assembly, sorry. You're going to have to put together the presentation, and then there's stuff that everybody's going to be contributing to, and that's happening from day one all the way through. So, I mean, this is a pretty solid Gantt chart for the project that you're working on right now. You might want to even take this and utilize it when you're trying to do your project. So it could be a good spot to pause the video and snap a picture of that on your phone or screenshot it or something. But I will move forward. Here's an example of how you would design a Gantt chart from the beginning. And the example that they're going to go through is how do you build a house. Okay, and so if you're going to build a house, you're going to start with the site. And that's the first thing that you have to do, is start with the site on day one, day two. Then you're going to build your foundation, and the foundation in this case they're saying is going to start at some point in day 2 after the site's cleared, and it's going to take up to day 6. And then once you get the foundation done, I would say you probably need to even maybe wait a day or two in there for the concrete to set and all those kinds of things. But anyhow, that's beside the point. You're going to start building your floors onto that foundation, because you can't do something before that. Once you have the floors done, then you can put your walls in. And I think you're starting to see how this Gantt chart's gonna kind of lay out. Put the roof on, get your exterior parts of your house put in. Now notice you can do some of the exterior siding stuff while the roof is being completed. I'm going to show you an example. Gantt chart from one of the projects I did, and it's kind of all over the place. It's not quite so linear like this, because we could do multiple things all at the same time. So I had to make it pretty small. This project was for the civil engineering course, and you can see the number of tasks that we had to do was pretty impressive. It went through to 75 different tasks that we had to accomplish. There were 3 people that were doing it, and we only had the morning and an afternoon and an evening, and then a morning and an afternoon. That was it. That's all the time that we had to be able to complete all the tasks. So we had to be really super organized. And it started with us brainstorming our ideas in the project interview. And here's where we added one more level to our Gantt chart. We added accountability. So it was, what did each person do individually in order to complete the Gantt chart. So this Jennifer Dobner person, she was purple. Travis Ray was blue, and then I was red. So anywhere where you see something that's red, that's what I was doing to contribute. So you can see I was working on a lot of this stuff up here, looking up code and that kind of stuff. We all participants were involved in brainstorming. And then as we go through, you can see that because I was working on the code part of it, Jen was really good at running Revit, so she was doing a lot of the Revit work. So that's where these site plans come from. So I was doing the research for what code was, and she was putting it together into Revit. So her and I were communicating quite nicely together, where Travis was doing a lot of the calculations, a lot of the math for this particular project. So you can see his work was put in here, and he couldn't do some of that math until he had the actual working designs. So it's just a little bit of a different method that a Gantt chart can look like. Again, we were doing a lot of the work simultaneously, so it's not quite so linear like what you just saw. Here's one last example of a Gantt chart, and then that'll be it. And in this particular example, you can see, I don't know what this is even for, or what task 1, task 2, task 3 was, but this is how they did it. They made a little graph. So they have the start date and the end date. It's counting the number of days that each task took, and they're getting a really nice visual layout for what that looks like. So that's all a Gantt chart does. It shows you the timeline of a project and how long each individual task took. In ours, for our course, we added the level of accountability by color coding the bars so that you knew who was working on which project.